Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the third and final episode of the Wing series, Wandering Quill Book Impressions. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe. And, as I said just now in the introduction, we are now on the third and final book of the Wings trilogy by F.R. Colom Brana. Now, if you've been listening to the first two book impressions of this series, just a little recap. In this world, angels, humans, Nephilims, and pixies all live together. However, there are dark forces at play to try to change the balance of power, the hierarchy of the world. In the first book, we learned that trouble is coming. In the second book, the trouble has increased, and now a full-on war is on the brink of engulfing the world of Gaia. And now in the third book, properly entitled The Last Angel, we now arrive to the conclusion. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, without further ado, let us dive into the third and final book of the Wing series by author F.R. Colom Brana, The Last Angel. Excerpt from A History of Gaia, Volume 1, on Humans and Nephilim. A century had come to pass after the last monster was exhumed underground. 100 years of peace on Gaia. During this time, God created humans, beings much like the angels in design, but lacking both wings and magic. Despite these physical limitations, humans were intelligent creatures. Their ingenuity, creativity, imagination paved the way for rapid development and expansion on Gaia. Humans and angels coexisted in harmony. For countless centuries, cities grew and flourished. With the help of the angels, humans prospered, but both had separate but equal grand cities. Humans had Sanctuary, Eterna Heart, formerly Everheart, and Haven. The angels had Oasis, Dawn, Elysian, and of course the capital, Paradise. They traded, shared knowledge, and bargained with each other. However, angels and humans never interbred, until at least the year 153 before the end of the Angel Civil War, B.E. In 153 BE, the first miracle occurred. The very first Nephilim was born. We know him as Amand. He was a human-angel crossbreed, reportedly born of an archangel, no less. The birth of the Nephilim was the cause of much celebration. It broke the unspoken rule of centuries past of no intermixing between the two species. Cities worldwide celebrated the birth, and soon more and more Nephilim were born. It is even said that the archangel Lumen produced children of such crossbreeding and that his bloodlines are still alive today. A fantastic city was to be erected in the honor of the Nephilim, a place where angels and humans would live together. Hence, Landor was built in the western lands of Gaia. Ahmad's father's identity is, unfortunately, unknown due to the destruction of Landor and the official records held within. In fact, records of the child's parents were destroyed worldwide during the Angels' Civil War. Augustus made it a point to destroy all the records. He described the event known as the first miracle as the first sin, and condemned the heinous act. But I digress. In the few years Ahmad lived, the Nephilim prospered. Lumen ruled over 10 of thousands of humans and angels and several thousand Nephilim when he was granted control of the city in 93 BE. Landor was said to be a grandiose city for a short amount of time it existed, until its destruction in the year 0 BE. The year after would come to be known as 1 AW, or After War. During Lumen's reign, many Nephilim reported growth of wings on their back, like angels. It is said that God and other archangels visited Lumen in Landor to see this phenomenon with their own eyes. Amazed at their ability, God found comfort in seeing that the Nephilim had to choose between being one or the other, human or angel. Augustus, however, found this terrifying. Excerpts from A History of Gaia, Volume 3, on prophecy. In Sin's own words, it starts with a meteor streaking across the sky sometime after the 8th Queen of Eternal Heart has a daughter. Man betrays us. In the east, an earthquake shakes all of Gaia. Monsters return to Earth, and their king leads them. The skies are blood red, the clouds black. The grounds dry up, crops die, and with them the livestock. God is nowhere to be seen. The angels are nowhere to be seen, save for a lone archangel, powerless against the demon. It is only us, and none of us have the power to stop this. None but the three. The three must rise to power once more to face the end. And who is this prophecy referring to? We don't know. So, let us dive in to the last angel. Chapter 1. A Monster Vision. Year 824 AW. Month Octus. Day 27. Athed stood in a great desert area, a vastness of dust surrounding him. Thunder cracked in the clouded sky above. White rays of light broke through the tumult of clouds to the west. In the east, a dark red had seeped in, scaring the heavens where the skies met. Athed stood. He strained to look upwards. His wings were frail and withered, while his eyes blazed a bright white, as though colorless flames burned there. He could feel the heat radiating from his face as anger and frustration swelled within him. Finally, it lingered in the air before him. His final test. He could only make it out as a shadow, a silhouette of a winged demon looking down on him. A spear in one hand, a sword in the other. Athed fell to his knees and let out a loud cry. A beam of light erupted from him, shooting skyward. The demon poised his spear to strike and lunged forward. In one swift move, the demon stabbed Athed through the chest. With a start, Athed awoke. Instead of the desert he'd seen in his visions, he found himself surrounded by a forest blanketed in white. Snowflakes slowly fell all around him. He knew his eyes glowed red without having to see a mirror. Such was the nature of being next to an archangel. His memory came back to him, and he remembered he was in the Terriain Mountains. Despite the cold, the dream had left him breathing heavily, covered in sweat. Beside him, Susurro was in a similar state, frightened by what he had seen. Bane and Isabelle silently stared at them from the other side of the campfire. "The dreams are getting worse, aren't they?" Isabelle asked. Athed met her gaze, but did not reply. Both she and Bane were bundled in heavy fur coats, gracious gifts from their short stay at Colom. Almost 3 months had passed since they left Eternal Heart. The party had made their way to Colom after departing the pixie capital, following their dinner with the newly crowned queen, Celes. Colom was the easternmost pixie city in Gaia, found at the base of the Terriain Mountains. Celes sent word to the governor that the party was headed that way. Despite Governor Klaus' invitation to stay in his castle, they had insisted they wanted as little attention as possible. Celes let him know to accommodate the party in a tavern. He happily did so, gifting everyone the coats they were currently wearing. It was a great honor for him to house the heroes who saved Eternal Heart, albeit in a stranger fashion than he had anticipated. It did not feel as though it were that long that they had fought for the sake of both humans and pixies. Ancient pixies sought to reclaim their power and rule over Gaia. The old twisted beings relit their old chimneys to unleash horrors onto the world in an attempt to regain their strength and avoid the horrific future they saw and would stop at nothing to prevent. Bane's people, hybrid human animals known as the Wolfsmen, had seen their home city of Honora destroyed before they were kidnapped as sacrifices for the chimneys, all in service to the old beings known as the Council of Three. Athed and Bane had managed to rejoin their friends in Eternal Heart after investigating the kidnappings in the wrong part of the world. They made it back just in time, for Cayenne's human army threatened the destruction of the pixie capital. After a desperate retaliation, Athed and his friends destroyed the councilmen and confronted Cyan, ending the short but cruel war between the humans and pixies. However, Athed was not spared entirely and suffered a dire wound to his thigh. Athed's legs still ached from Sif's spear attack. It was mostly healed, but the tight scar remained as a grim reminder of their encounter. The human king had been freed from a control spell by Celes, and together the pair impacted a peace deal between the humans and the pixies. It was not long after that Athed and Susurro decided to continue their mission to paradise to find a way to stop the return of the monsters. Isabelle and Bane, loyal friends and supporters of Athed, came along to bring their aid. But visions of what was to come deeply troubled Athed's hope for the future. Athed clutched at his chest where he had been stabbed in his dream. He breathed a sigh of relief when he felt nothing but his chainmail under his dark tunic. Realizing he was still panting, Athed took a moment to catch his breath before he turned his attention to Isabelle to give his belated reply. Yeah. They became worse ever since you received word of King Sion's death, she said. Remember when we heard the news of his suicide in Koldisvan? Just when I thought things were finally getting better. All this should have ended when we defeated those vile councilmen. Why isn't the world right? The world spins more out of control as each day passes, Susurro said, clutching himself. The old angel found himself in a similar state as to Athed, agitated and breathless. We must get to paradise before it's too late. Our destiny is tied to this fate, Athed. What you saw in the pit was but a fraction of what is to come. Mithma leads hordes so innumerable no one will stand a chance when the veil finally falters. What do you think we can do? Athed said. He looked at the bald old angel, examining his features. His long gray and black beard appeared more weathered than before. There were new lines around his eyes. Perhaps the visions were catching up to him, or his confrontations with Sif was taking its toll. Regardless, the quest was exhausting them both. Perhaps as best as we can prepare as best as we can and face the monsters head on, Susurro said. Get some rest while you can. You need to continue your training. You still have much to learn. I don't think I can sleep after that. Athed sat up and stared into the fire, his body overheating. He wished the cold would find its way to him. It would only take a moment, despite the fire roaring. No, I would rather prepare as much as I can while I still can. For there is still some time left in the world for us. Master, will you tell me again what awaits us? As you wish. First, we need to get to these mountains. That will be the longest and most difficult part of our journey. Winter never leaves this area, and we all know gods lurk in these parts. Then we must find the hidden bridge to cross the Straits of Pearls. The Nobius Bridge is elusive. Like a shadow within fog, it comes and goes. Old wives' tales, as they say. The truth is a little more complicated. In any case, that's when it gets its name from. It means clouds in our language, but leave that to me. Finally, we must go through the unknown lands, and then we will reach paradise. How do we find the hidden bridge? Bane asked, interjecting his voice into the conversation. That's an excellent question, Wolfman. Centuries have passed since I've seen the thing. Glimpses of it come to mind. The secret was on the beach somewhere. Hopefully. My memory will serve me right, and I will find it, Susurro replied. Hopefully? Isabelle asked. It's been nearly a millennium since I have seen the bridge, and as its name suggests, it's hidden. It took Isabelle a moment, but then she burst into laughing. Everyone else fell into laughter too. It was much needed, especially now in the middle of the snowy enclosure. For days they had been battling the elements, the same bleak scenery before their eyes. Anything to help their morale was welcome. When at last they caught their breath, Athed turned to Susurro with another question. Master, would you tell us about the unknown lands? Lush lands with more magic in them than that of the pixies. Trees so tall they can put your great castles to shame. Susurro turned to Bane. Your home in Honora was a small preview of what strange and amazing wonders await in those lands. Susurro smiled at the thought. It has been so long since I've seen you smile, Master, Athed remarked. Not since I freed you from the Fergus Mountains, from that terrible god, Fulfried. Yes, well, Susurro regained his usual stern composure. Let us pray we won't have to face another one of those in these mountains. I don't know if I have it in me after that blasted councilman. Are we going to run into that old god here? Isabelle asked. He looked around the cold mountain suspiciously, becoming immediately more alert, more attuned to her current surroundings. There are many old gods in these mountains. When God closed off paradise to the world, he did so knowing that any angel who wanted to return home would have to traverse these lands to prove themselves. God limited his ventures to these parts. Even he knew to fear some of the gods here. However, there are those who think he eventually settled here among Gaia's true rulers. Why not in paradise with his angels? Bane asked. He was a wise old man. We know he placed a door here, though not why he did so. I should very much like answers to that and many other questions too. After the fall of Oxus, I never saw my father again. In fact, there have been no news of him at all. Mysteries, it seems, befall us all. But for now, we must band together to repel the Dragon King. Susurro turned to address Isabelle. To answer your question, I don't know if we will run to an old god or not. I would rather stay out of their way. We must remain vigilant. That doesn't sound all that terrifying, Isabelle said. Don't worry, Isabelle. I won't let anything happen to you. Athed said. You better not. She smiled. Beneath her breath, she whispered, You better not, my love. I need more archers on the walls, the captain yelled down. Tradestown was in a frenzy this night. This was the biggest skirmish to date. A horde of monsters stood before the front gate. Fire arrows flew into the city from the bows the monsters held. A mixed group of miners and knights wielding bows and crossbows found their way up the walls to defend it. Meanwhile, the monsters were pulling up makeshift ladders and poles and raising them along the walls. Ready swords, the captain yelled. Monsters were climbing the walls. Jacob stood atop the wall with his chain and sword ready to fight the Valkyries alongside the brave knights from Haven and the soldiers from Tradestown. His arms were sore from previous days of fighting and his clothes were tattered, but he still readied himself to combat whatever came up the walls with a fire in his heart. As soon as the first gargoyle made its way to the top, it met Jacob's blade. The knights rushed to face the monsters before them. Blades clashed with bizarre curved monster weapons. Monsters and men fell. Here the men would hold their ground to the last. The grueling battle would last beyond the coming night and into the morning. Year 824 AW, month Octus, day 28. Fortune favored the brave souls of Tradestown that night. The morning sun brought the monsters' retreat. They took their losses and disappeared into the woods. The victory was bravely fought for. The men who stood struggled to catch their breath in the overwhelming feeling of relief at the sight of the rising sun. They're retreating! Huzzah! Cried the soldiers. Jacob looked around to see the countless bodies of slain monsters and men on the walls. Parts of the walls still smoldered. Along the moat were slain monster bodies entangled in the spiked trenches. Jacob looked down to see the blood stains on his clothes. It was not his blood. Apart from the couple of scratches, he was unhurt. Another victory, but at another great cost. Huzzah, men! They cannot stand against our might! A voice boomed. Jacob looked down to see General Villas in his green uniform making his way through the streets. His outfit bore dark stains, yet she held her head high. Soldiers cheered as she passed. She walked up the wall and eventually made her way to Jacob. General? He greeted her. Captain, once again, I find myself in your debt. Villas said. General, we need to talk. Jacob started. Not here, Jacob. I know what you wish to speak of, but not in the front of the men, she replied. Meet me in the Lord's Manor after I am done congratulating the men. Please prepare the walls for another assault in the meantime. Yes, my general. He acknowledged her order. She turned and continued her tour of celebrating the soldiers. They needed it. A word of praise and encouragement. There was little hope to hold on to these days. Anything reaffirming their current position and victorious meant the world to them. Without their will, the walls of Tradestown surely would have fallen by now. Jacob turned to ready the walls for another assault. There were crucial tasks to attend to, despite their win. To prepare for the coming night's assault, they would have to begin reparations now. No time to soak it in. Be ready or expect death at your door. The Seeker turned to the men nearest to him. You men, take those monster corpses and burn them. The wall must be cleared and battle ready before coming dusk. Get the carpenters and woodworkers up. Before we can move on, major damages need to be repaired, so their ogres can't come marching in here. What about our dead? Move them to the base of the walls with the honor and respect they deserve. When the time is right, we'll bury them. They must stay out of the way of preparations for now. In order to give them proper funerals later, the living must survive the next night. It was dusk by the time the last night was buried. Jacob ensured he was around to see it all the way through. Before him were the many graves of knights and citizens who died defending Tradestown. On every mountain was a sword or stone placed over the buried individual. The longer he remained there, the larger the number of burials grew. The people here used the large, open, dry ground in the west part of the city for the graves, but their area was shrinking. Another day of fighting and they would have nowhere else to put their dead. Diggers wiping the sweat from their brows as Jacob told them to get a little rest. Tearful families at last began to trickle out. No more words could be said for those who were grieving. After the last person left, so did Jacob. He made his way to the Lord Titus's manor. It was a quiet walk, and the manor was eerily silent from the outside as well, despite laborers engaging in their work, setting up for the next attack. Carts were pushed, the muddy streets were trampled, but no one said a word. The look on their faces said it all. The wondrous victory in the morning paved the way for the horror of the coming night. At last Jacob made it to the front doors. He knocked, and the servants in elegant garbs opened the doors for him as he entered. "This way, sir." One of the servants motioned for Jacob to follow. He was led upstairs, above the meeting areas, into a hallway. At the end of the hallway, he turned left into a nicely lit small office. Titus sat at the head and his arms atop his desk. Villa sat adjacent to him, her legs crossed, still in her stained green clothes. "Ah, Captain, glad you could make it." Villa started. She turned to her servants. "Thank you. Please leave us." The servants bowed and left. "My Lord General," Jacob greeted the pair, "we lost another 25 good men last night. We were lucky with our victory, but the monsters were just probing our defenses. All it will take is one more well-out assault and the city will fall. We cannot continue our defenses. Evacuation must be a top priority." "I can't do this anymore," Titus moaned. "We cannot leave just yet," Villas began. Jacob could not hide the inevitable disappointment from his face. "Please take a seat," Villas went on, motioning to an empty chair. "We have received word from King Edward in Sanctuary. With the new production line of walkers set to come out at the end of the year, he needs us to push through for a few more shipments of coal. Just a little longer." She shifted in her seat. "There's something else we must discuss. Since Kyan's death, we have kept you here longer than is necessary. You fight bravely and you motivate the troops. However, I think it's time for change." "I don't understand," Jacob said. "Our time here is coming to an end." "You're right. We can't hold Trainstown much longer, but we will continue to hold it for a little longer, without you. This has always been my task, not yours. I made a promise to see your love in Ethanheart, and I have delayed this from you. Here, at the end of things, I will not see good men die for no cause. The men need me here." Violet cut him off. "Please, just let me finish. I want you to escort our next shipment of metals and coals to Sanctuary. That is the priority now. Whatever shipments remain must be protected at all costs, and this one especially. I have already sent word to Edward. I want you to give our king a realistic assessment of what's going on down here. You should hear of the sacrifices those of Tradestown have made. Let them prepare our cities for what is to come. In addition, I release you from your duty here. It feels wrong for me to leave." "On that I agree," Titus mobs. He threw himself back in his chair and crossed his arms. "Captain, I think that both you and I know we must come next. We must join forces with the Pixies and rid ourselves of this monster problem," the general continued. "The silence is over, and it's been now for some time. And I know people are tired of fighting, but you have seen what goes on here yourself. We must reconcile with the Pixies. Scouts report there are more than 100,000 monsters amassed to our south. I tell them to keep that information to themselves, but they are here. This is our only chance. Maybe your love can bridge the gap. If the king will not listen, would you go to Eternal Heart yourself?" Jacob took a moment and reflected and realized she was right. "I will, General. We are doomed. Everything I've sacrificed here for our king's cause and our subjects. I'll not see my town and my work squandered. Our people still rely on me," Titus groaned. "If you had listened to the Nephilim's warnings, perhaps we wouldn't find ourselves here. Thank the angels he came and ended our war before we reached each other for the monsters." Violet snapped. Titus reluctantly nodded. Violet composed herself again and turned towards Jacob. "Forgive me, Captain. Gather your belongings. The shipment is set out to head out 2 days from now. Trying to get yourself killed tonight. That's an order. You're dismissed." "My Lord General." Jacob stood up, bowed, and left. And we will actually stop here right now. So far, this is actually the beginning of a great end to a trilogy. So it already does leave a lot of spoilers in this chapter from the first few pages. So first and foremost, we already know Celeste is now queen. Cayenne's already dead in the story. The Council of Three has already been disbanded and destroyed. Leo, we don't know very much in the first few pages, but one can assume he's probably either fled or he's killed. Also, again, I love that the author still adds more world building from the prefaces in the volumes of Gaia. It really fleshes out the world. And I love how now in this one we learn more about the Nephilims and how they were born. And there's great prophecy of the three that are needed to pretty much save the world. Now the question is, who are these three? We know Susurro is still alive. We also know of Steve, or Sif, who's now in the picture. And then there's Athed. Could Athed be the third angel? Or could he be one of the three angels? We don't know. Also, I really do appreciate the dire situation of the people in this first chapter. It is grim. There doesn't seem to be a chance of any survival. The only chance that these people have is siding themselves with the pixies. And it really gives you that sense like this is it. This is like the end-all, be-all. And honestly, I can't wait to continue reading this to see what happens next. So, like always, this will be another 5 out of 5 review on the Wandering Quill YouTube channel. Now, if you want to purchase a copy of the book and leave a review yourself for the author, because as indie authors, reviews are always important. They help build our brand and our notoriety in the book world. I will leave the link down below to purchase a copy. And make sure to check out the other 2 episodes for the first 2 books to understand the world building of the Wings trilogy. And also be on the lookout for my interview with Fr. Colom Brana coming later this month in February. Well, listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you all very soon in the future installments. This has been the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe, signing out.